Mantras of our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, "It is the object of my integral yoga to transform life by bringing down into it the light, power, and bliss of the divine truth and its dynamic certitudes." This yoga, called integral yoga, is not a yoga of world shunning asceticism but of divine life, with always our love and blessings, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo.
When countries, continents, the choice is imperative. Truth or the abyss. Nation, continent, le choix est impératif. C'est la vérité ou l'abysse.
Words of our Divine Mother, taken from the collective works of our Divine Mother, Volume 2, Words of Long Ago. Date 14th May 1912, page 51. Question, sweet Mother, what is my place in the universal work? For this, our Divine Mother says, we all have a role to fulfill, a work to accomplish, a place which we alone can occupy. But since this work is the expression, the outer manifestation of the innermost depth of our being, we can become conscious of its definitive form only when we become conscious of this depth within ourselves. This is what sometimes happens in cases of the true realization. The moment we perceive the transfiguring light and give ourselves to it without reserve, the moment we perceive the transfiguring light and give ourselves to it without reserve, we can suddenly and precisely become aware of what we are made for, the purpose of our existence on earth. But this enlightenment is exceptional. It is brought about within us by a whole series of efforts and inner attitudes. And one of the essential conditions, if we want to achieve and maintain within ourselves these attitudes, these soul states, is to devote part of our time each day to some impersonal action. Every day we must do something useful for others. Until we know the essential thing we are intended to do, we must therefore find a temporary occupation which will be the best possible manifestation of our present capacities and our goodwill. Until we know the essential thing we are intended to do, we must therefore find a temporary occupation which will be the best possible manifestation of our present capacities and our goodwill. Then we shall give ourselves to this occupation with conscientiousness and perseverance, knowing that it may well be only a stage, and that with the progress of our idea and our energies, we shall certainly one day be led to see more clearly the work we must accomplish. Our Divine Mother says, to the extent that we lose the habit of referring everything to ourselves and learn more and more to give ourselves more completely with greater love to earth and men, we shall see our horizons widen and our duties become more numerous and clear. We shall find that our action follows a general line of progression determined by our own particular temperament. Indeed, the successive occupations we shall hold before we become conscious of the definitive form of our action will always point in the same direction, be of the same type and mode, which is the spontaneous expression of our character, our nature, our own characteristic vibration. Our Divine Mother says the discovery of this tendency, this particular orientation, should come about quite naturally. It is a matter of taste and free choice beyond all outer selfish considerations. People are often blamed for choosing an action for themselves which does not correspond to their abilities. There is a slight confusion here. Those who freely set out to accomplish their own favorite work cannot, in my opinion, be on the wrong track. This work must surely be the expression of their own particular tendency, but their mistake lies in wanting to accomplish this work all at once, in its entirety, in its integrality, in depth, and above all on the surface, forgetting that the very conception of the work is imperfect as they are imperfect, and that to be wise, they should add to the knowledge of what they wish to do the more immediate, practical knowledge of what they are capable of doing at the present moment. Our Divine Mother says by taking these two factors into account, they can employ themselves with a minimum waste of time and energy. But few people act with so much insight and wisdom, and very often happens that one who is seeking his way falls into one of his possible errors. Either he takes his desire for realities, that is, he overestimates his strength and capacity and imagines that he is capable of immediately assuming a place and a role which he can honorably fulfill only after many years of methodical and persevering effort. Or he underestimates his latent powers and deliberately confines himself, in spite of his deeper aspirations, to a task which is far beneath his abilities and which gradually extinguishes with him that light that could have shone for others. It seems difficult at first to steer clear of these pitfalls, find the balanced way, the middle way. But we have a sure pointer to guide us. Our Divine Mother says, above all, whatever we undertake should not be done for the purpose of self assertion. If we are attached to fame and glory, to the esteem of our peers, we are soon led to make concessions to them, and if we seek any opportunity to admire ourselves, it becomes easy to make ourselves out to be what we are not, and nothing more obscures the ideal within us. Our Divine Mother says we should never tell ourselves openly or indirectly, I want to be great. What occasion can I find for myself in order to become great? On the contrary, you should tell yourself, there must be certainly something I can do better than anyone else, since each one of us is a special mode of manifestation of the divine power, which in its essence is one and all. However humble and modest it may be, this is precisely the thing to which I should devote myself, and in order to find it, I shall observe and analyze my taste, tendency, and preferences, and I shall do it without pride or excessive humility. Whatever others may think, I shall do it just as I breathe, just as the flower smells sweet, quite simply, quite naturally, because I cannot do otherwise. Our Divine Mother says, as soon as we have accomplished, as soon as we have abolished within us, even for a moment, all egoistic desires, all personal and selfish aims, we can surrender to this inner spontaneity, this deep inspiration which will enable us to commune with the living and progressive forces of the universe. The conception of our work, says our Divine Mother, will inevitably grow more perfect as we grow more perfect ourselves. And to realize this growing perfection, no effort to exceed ourselves should be neglected, but the work we perform must become always more and more joyful, spontaneous, like water welling from a pure spring, says our Divine Mother. Next date, 21st May 1912. Question, Sweet Mother, what is the greatest obstacle in ourselves to our consecration to impersonal work? For this, our Divine Mother says, regarded from the most general point of view, this obstacle is indistinguishable from the very reason for the work to be accomplished. It is the present state of imperfection of physical matter. Since we are made up of imperfect substance, we cannot but share in this imperfection. Therefore, whatever degree of perfection, consciousness, or knowledge is possible to our inmost being, the very fact that it incarnates in a physical body gives rise to obstacles to the purity of its manifestation of matter. We must therefore not be surprised or saddened if we encounter obstacles within ourselves, for every single being on earth has difficulties to overcome. Our Divine Mother says the cause of this imperfection may become apparent to us from 2 points of view, one general, other individual. From the general point of view, the imperfection of matter comes from its lack of receptivity to the more subtle forces which are to be manifested through it. But this lack of receptivity itself has many causes, and to explain them would lead us too far away from the heart of our subject. Besides, I think that in the last analysis, all difficulties lies in the illusion of personality, that is, the illusion that one thing can be distinct from the whole. To avoid speculating on the necessity of this illusion for the very existence of the universe as we know it, I shall consider the question solely from the terrestrial and human angle. This illusion of a self separate from the whole being brings about two tendencies within ourselves. The first comes from an unconscious need for identification with the whole. But the very fact of illusion of personality, each one conceives this identification only as an absorption into himself and seeks more or less to be the center of this whole. As a result, in proportion to his intellectual or physical strength. Each one attempts to draw himself everything he is conscious of in order to continuously increase his personality. Our Divine Mother says this is the outcome of a desire which is justified in essence to become conscious of everything but ignorant in expression. For if a way to become conscious of everything does exist, it certainly does not lie in trying to draw everything to oneself, which is absurd and unrealizable, but in identifying one's consciousness with the consciousness of the whole, which demands the very opposite action and attitude. The second tendency, which is in fact a normal consciousness of the first, is an excessively conservative spirit, a fixity of the whole nature, intellectual, moral, and physical, which makes it impossible for us to transform ourselves as rapidly as we should in order to be always in harmony with the law of the universal progress. Our Divine Mother says it is as if the individual were afraid of not being different enough from others if he encouraged too free and large an exchange with the whole. Moreover, this fixity comes from the desire to appropriate and the error of believing that we can own something in the universe. We think that the elements we are made up of are our own. Consciously or unconsciously, we want to hold on to them for ourselves, while at the same time, we are quite ready to add to them by drawing other elements to ourselves. But we forget that since there is no real separation, we can receive nothing if we do not give. We must be a link in the chain. The link does not grow bigger at the expense of its neighbors. But when it faithfully transmits the current it has received, it will receive another, and the more complete and swift its transmission, the more it will be brought into contact with a great number of forces or things for it to use or manifest. And so, little by little, and by taking and keeping nothing for itself, it can become aware of everything by communing with everything. Foreseeing the objections which could be raised, I shall add this, says our Divine Mother. When I speak of illusion of personality, I am not denying that each one has a special mode of manifestation. Differentiation doesn't mean division. Why should there be so many countless links in the chain if each one had its own function? And here, another comparison is needed to complete the first, for any comparison is necessarily incomplete. If we consider ourselves as cells of an immense living organism, we shall immediately understand that a cell which is dependent for its own life on the life of the whole and can separate itself from it only at the risk of destruction, does in fact have its own special part to play in the whole. But this role is precisely what is profoundly spontaneous in our being. No egoistic assertion of our personality is needed to discover it. On the contrary, the more fully we give ourselves to an impersonal action, the more this role will gain in strength and clarity within us. But this role is precisely what constitutes our true individuality, since it is our own special way of manifesting the divine essence, which is one in everything and in all, says our Divine Mother.
सूर उदिदेवो धिगोपाः जन्मेव नित्यं तनयं जुषस्वस्तोमं मे अग्निर्दनवासु जातं त्वं नृचतशा